Welcome everyone to the Bidders Conference for the Community Solar Energy Sovereignty Grant Program. This is a program funded by the Climate Equitable Jobs Act. Today, we will go over some specific information regarding applying for this grant. We hope that this information will encourage you to apply and provide some best practices and tools to be successful in your application. Before I begin, I would like to just do a little housekeeping. So this Bidders Conference is recorded, and if you have any questions, please put your questions in the chat. In between each section, we will open up an opportunity to answer some of those questions. If we fail to get to your questions, they will be included in the online FAQ. And of course, we will be sending out the recording to this Bidders Conference as well as these slides to you tomorrow. Make sure you've registered for this conference, and we will send the information specifically to the email address you used for the conference. So if you're using someone else's credentials, it will not come directly to you. It will go to them. So make sure you have registered. And so with that, I will begin. Next slide, please. So my name is Hillary Scott Ogurinde. I am Deputy Director for the Office of Energy and Business Utility. My office is the office that administers two of the CEJA programs under the Jobs and Environmental Justice. That's the Equity Eligible Futures Grant, as well as this Community Solar Sovereignty. Also under CEJA, our office administers the Energy Transition Community Grants. Join with me today is Amber from Technical Support. She is in the Office of Accountability. And I also have Christine Flynn. She is part of the team that supports DCEO in its implementation of CEJA, and she is from the Center for Governmental Studies at Northern Illinois University. Next slide, please. Today we will cover quite a bit. So get ready. We will give you an overview of the CEJA legislation. We will specifically speak to the opportunities within the Community Solar Energy Sovereignty Grant. And we will invite the Office of Accountability to go over some important elements regarding GATA. That's the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act. And then Christine will come in and she will speak to the application process and provide some support and resources for you to use. If there is time, we will have questions at the end of this presentation. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so make sure you stay on mute. If you do want to speak at the end and raise your question and speak your question, then go ahead and raise your hand so that we can do that. And we won't have any breakout groups today, but we will encourage you to sign up for technical assistance, and therefore you can have one-to-one time with our technical assistance teams. Next slide, please. Okay, let's jump on into what is the Climate Equitable Jobs Act. A brief overview would be that we know that the CEJA legislation puts the state of Illinois on a path to achieving 100% renewable energy by 2050. That is the goal. And there are multiple state agencies engaged with implementing this goal. And DCEO, Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, is one of those state agencies. And we've focused primarily on workforce and business development. And so this particular grant program falls under that business development economic piece related to the CEJA legislation. Next slide. So the resounding word throughout CEJA is equity. And so what that means is we want to make sure that in this opportunity for transitioning to the green economy and the new opportunities that will arise, that there are certain groups within our population who now have an opportunity to transition out of poverty, to gain additional resources and opportunities to wealth. And so we want to specifically provide them the resources they need in an effort to transition and elevate their economic status. Next slide. And what that looks like is that we provide specifically the tools they need in an effort to access the opportunity. In the picture here, the opportunity is watching the soccer game or football, but for us, it is accessing the green economy. It is addressing the environmental justice injustices they've endured. It is accessing a great paying jobs, establishing a career, getting the tools they need to build a project. And so in this case, the tool we are specifically providing is the Community Solar Sovereignty Grant, which provides the pre-development expenses you may need to access the green economy in this portion of our transition. So next slide. And these programs are primarily provided in 13 regions throughout the state of Illinois. And we identify those regions as R3 communities or environmental justice communities. And so that you can see the link at the bottom is the web address to where you can click that link and type in an address to determine whether or not your project site or your community or your home or your business fits within one of those EJ communities or R3 communities. Next slide, please. So these resources are provided throughout the state in these 13 regional, these 13 cities, and those 13 cities then support a particular service area around them with the hopes to really be able to reach those within throughout the state of Illinois. And so the CEJA ecosystem, as you will hear us say that word many times, consists of contractor programs, workforce programs, and economic and business development programs. So under the contractor programs, you have the contractor incubator, and there will be 13 of those incubators throughout the state. And then there are the prime accelerators. There are 3 prime accelerators located in the northern, central, and southern part of the state. We hope that these contractors will then hire many people who will be graduates and participants of the workforce programs. And so those workforce programs is the Clean Jobs Workforce Network. They will be 13 of those. And then the Climate Works pre-apprenticeship programs. There will be 3 regional grantees, northern, central, and southern. And then there are the returning residents, clean jobs programs. Those programs are located in correctional facilities throughout the state. Those 3 workforce programs are supported by navigators and then barrier reduction providers and services. And then the hopes is that this ecosystem will be fueled by the elements that occur under the Economic Development and Jobs and Environmental Justice grants, that projects will be created that will then put to work the contractors in the purple box and the workforce in the orange box, creating an ecosystem, an organism that is effectively working. There are several commissions and councils that really keep an eye on the activities that are occurring in this ecosystem, and you can find those in the blue box below. Next slide. So today we will focus on the Economic Development, Jobs, and Environmental Justice grants, and that is specifically the Community Solar Energy Sovereignty Grant. Next slide. So I will pause here to see if you have any questions. And after we have a round of questions, so Devin, let me know if there are any questions specific to what I just shared. And if not, we will move on and allow Amber to go over the GATA information. Are there any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Hillary. We do have one question from Kathy Evans about eligibility of community colleges to apply, but I believe that eligibility information is going to be provided shortly in the presentation. Do we want to wait till then?
Yes, we will allow Christine to cover that.
Perfect.
If there are no other questions about what I just shared, Amber?
Yes, thank you. Go ahead and get started. If you could advance the slide, get that going.
Yep, just one moment. We're gonna just come back to this section. I want to get Amber's information up here. All right. There you go. There you go, Amber.
All right, thank you. So like Christine said, my name is Amber Broughton, and I'm with the DCEO Office of Accountability. And in this presentation, we are going to discuss GATA and the GATA grantee portal, as well as pre-qualification and other items. Next slide. All right, so yeah, we're going to review the DCEO grant process, how to register in the Illinois GATA grantee portal, the elements of pre-qualification, notice of funding opportunities, as well as what to expect after a grant award. Next slide. All right, so this is kind of a big picture of the DCEO competitive grant lifecycle process. So we are in that talking about the pre-award requirements. So having those pre-qualification items in place and in good standing before you apply for a grant. We will be talking about the fiscal and administrative assessment, or ICQ. So once you kind of have those pre-qualification items in place, then it's time to submit application documents. Those applications are reviewed by a merit review committee, and then the applicants will receive notice from DCEO either way. On to an active grant. So you will receive a notice of state award and a grant agreement will be developed. So this grant agreement is really going over all expectations for the grant, all requirements. This will be the legally binding document. It's signed by you as the grantee, signed by DCEO leadership, and then is considered an active grant. You will be, grant funds are paid on a reimbursement basis. So you are submitting financial and periodic performance reports on expenditures. So once those reports are in and approved, then you are reimbursed for those expenditures. Also want to note that there is annual audit reports that are due, and then there's the closeout of the grant once the grant period ends. Next slide. All right, so I've used this term GATA. That refers to the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act. So this is where the state of Illinois adopted the federal grant guidance and regulations that are codified in 2 CFR Part 200. So taking the federal guidance and adapting them to state of Illinois grants. That is what the GATA, the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act, did. Next slide. All right, this is the GATA grantee portal, grants.illinois.gov/portal. So if you are brand new to state of Illinois grants, you are going to want to create an account in here. If it's been a while, you're still going to need to get in there. You would just click on the button that says Grantee Portal Sign In. But if you are brand new to state of Illinois grants and the portal, then you're going to want to create an account. And on this screenshot here, it's that middle button. Next slide. If you are brand new to the GATA grantee portal, I highly, highly recommend that you look at the GATA new user guide, which we have that link in the chat. This provides step-by-step instructions on registering in the GATA portal. It can be used not only for new users, but there's some troubleshooting things in there as well. If it's been a while and you need to refresh, get a refreshment on this portal. I also recommend looking at gata.illinois.gov This is the site for the Grant Accountability and Transparency Unit at the Governor's Office of Management and Budget. So it just takes a deeper dive into many aspects of the GATA process. So I recommend looking at that. Next slide. All right, so I'm going to talk now about pre-qualification. What do we mean when we say pre-qualification? The state of Illinois has defined a set of requirements for all organizations seeking to receive grant funding. So these entities must meet these requirements to be deemed qualified and in good standing. This status, it needs to be obtained by your organization. You must be in qualified status by the application review date, but you also need to maintain this status throughout the life of your grant program. It needs to be in place to be able to develop the grant agreement. So this is an important one that you are going to want to look into as soon as you can with the GATA grantee portal, because there are some steps involved with this. Let's see, let's go to the next slide. So this has a screenshot of what pre-qualification could look like in the GATA grantee portal for your entity. So if you scroll down from the GATA portal main page, you will see this pre-qualification status, and it'll list all the aspects of pre-qualification and where you are in the process. So those two items that are in red, those are items, something is going on with this pre-qualification item, and it needs to be addressed by you, the entity, by the grantee. So in this case, their SAM.gov account and Illinois Secretary of State are not in good status. So the button to the right, that help button there, that will help guide you through how to remediate the issue. So if you do see that you have items in red, you are going to want to address those right away. The item in yellow is pending. So that means that there's something in the works. It's usually something that is being reviewed and will refresh and be in good standing within a day or two. So nothing that you need to do with the yellow items, just the red. Okay, next slide. All right, now I'm going to go through each of these items in the pre-qualification status. So we've got SAM.gov. An entity must have an active registration with SAM.gov, or the System of Award Management. Your SAM.gov registration needs to be validated annually. Please make sure that when you are registering, that you set your registration to public. That way the state system, the GATA grantee portal, can sync properly with the federal system, SAM.gov. So make sure your registration is set to public. When you are in SAM.gov, you will receive a UEI number that stands for Unique Entity Identifier. You're going to need that number when you are registering in the state GATA grantee portal. I want to note that we have a lot of folks, we've seen this a lot, where folks will receive a UEI number and stop the registration. There are more steps involved, so please be sure to complete your entire registration in SAM.gov. Okay, next slide. All right, on to the Federal Employer ID number, or FEIN. This is used to identify an entity. The IRS provides them free of charge. So after you have your FEIN number, nothing else is needed for this one. It will automatically update once you have your SAM.gov account synced with the GATA portal. All right, next slide. Federal excluded parties list. You cannot be on this list. to be able to receive state of Illinois grants. So once you are synced with your SAM.gov account, it will automatically update if there is an issue with that. We don't see this very often. It's usually something pretty severe, but if you do find yourself on that list, you are not eligible to apply for state of Illinois grants. Next slide. All right, the Illinois Secretary of State requirement. You need to obtain a certificate of good standing from the Illinois Secretary of State office. This is to show that the entity exists and is in full compliance with their state regulations. So you register with the Secretary of State at ilsos.gov. We've got that in the chat as well. The exception for this requirement would be governmental entities. They do not need to register with the Secretary of State, but all other entities, nonprofits, businesses, you will need to obtain the certificate of good standing. Next slide. The Illinois Stop Payment List. You cannot be on this list. You will not be considered pre-qualified and in good standing to apply for a grant. If you do find your entity on this list, it is usually something that can be reversed. It's usually the submission of a missing report, such as a grant report or an audit. So if you do find yourself on that list, you can contact your former grant manager for your past grant or your cognizant agency. Here at DCEO, you can contact us at ceo.granthelp@illinois.gov. And we can give you more information on what the issue is and how to fix the issue to be in good standing. Next slide. The Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services, or DHFS, they have the authority to impose sanctions on entities and individuals. This is it's usually something pretty severe, like the violation of an administrative rule, civil law, or criminal offense. So if you do find that your entity is on this list, you are not eligible for state of Illinois grant funding. Next slide. Just a couple of tips with the GATA grantee portal. Please be sure to go in there and check your contact list on your entity's portal page and make sure that it is current and accurate. You want to make sure that the right people are receiving notifications that have access to your entity's page. So you can, the screenshot here shows this button that says manage. You can go in there and change who has access and who is receiving the correct notifications. You also want to go in there and make sure that your fiscal year end date is accurate. So that will come into play later on when it is time to submit an audit. So you want to make sure that your fiscal year end date is correct in there. All right, next slide. So the notice of funding opportunity, which we're going to go more into the notice of funding opportunity for this particular grant, but just notice of funding opportunities in general are the document that really lay out everything for that particular grant. So it'll lay out the program description, the funding information, how much money is going to be sent or is going to be given, and how many potential grantees there might be, who is eligible to apply for this grant. It will go through all of the eligibility information. It will also go through how to submit your application. So this is the document that will have all of the information that is pertinent for this particular grant. We also have other NOFOs, as we call them. Those can be found in the Catalog of State Financial Assistance, which is the state of Illinois' database for all current grant opportunities. Next slide. All right, just want to mention the Fiscal and Administrative Internal Controls Questionnaire, or ICQ. This is in the GATA grantee portal, and it needs to be completed every state fiscal year. The screenshots here, that first one on the left will show each year and if you have completed or if a new ICQ is due. This is used to mitigate risk and build grantee capacity. So it's going to go over some questions on your entity's quality of management systems, financial and programmatic reporting, ability to effectively implement requirements, and your audits. Just want to point out that this is not used punitively and does not determine whether or not you're going to receive an award. Next one. All right, so I've gone over these kind of pre-award requirements, and then I'll just briefly go over kind of what to expect if you are awarded this grant. You will be assigned a DCEO grant manager, and they will be your first point of contact here at DCEO. You'll be submitting periodic financial reports and periodic performance reports to them unless you hear otherwise. You will also be submitting an annual audit in the GATA grantee portal. So it's just something to keep in mind. I always like to let people know about this because it is a requirement. There will likely be a cost associated with an audit that the grantee will be responsible for. So it's something just to keep in mind before applying for the grant. Next slide. So the type of audit that will be needed is determined by the total expenditures of federal awards and the total expenditures of state awards. So this table just goes over how the audit type is determined. But when you are in the GATA grantee portal, the first step in the audit is called Step 1 certification form. It will go through a series of questions and will let you know what sort of audit is needed. So this is just to be used as a reference. Next slide. All right, so we have many resources available to you as applicants, as grantees throughout the life cycle of the grant. We have the DCEO grantee resource site. This contains a large amount of information on various grant topics. So we have everything from kind of one-page quick reference guides to instructional videos on many of the topics that I've talked about today. We also have, if you go to our DCEO grantee resource site, we have a training and office hours invitation list that I highly recommend signing up for. Our office has weekly virtual office hours every Tuesday from 2 to 3. We also have monthly pre-qualification trainings. So that the items that I was talking about for pre-qualification, we take a deeper dive into that every month for folks. We also have a monthly training on revolving topics. So many of the topics that I've talked about today, we take a deeper dive into those, and those change every month. So I recommend joining our invitation list for that. If you have any questions for the Office of Accountability and the grantee help desk, I recommend emailing us at ceo.granthelp@illinois.gov. And that is all I have. So I will pass it back over. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Amber. Do we have any questions for Amber at this point in the chat, Devin?
I don't know that we have any questions specific to the GATA portal, the GATA process, and pre-qualification or any of those subjects, but we have a number of questions related to project eligibility. And I think a few of these may require some additional internal conversation with DCEO to figure out if they fit the eligibility criteria in the NOFO.
Well, let's hop into some of that right now, and we will save a few minutes at the end of this section to raise one of those questions. So I think the moment everyone's been waiting for is more information on the Community Solar Sovereignty Grant Program. So next slide, let's hop into that. And first, raise why are we why did the writers of this legislation include this particular grant and its offerings? And the reason is this program is intended to support and develop the community solar projects that really put ownership into the hands of local residents. In an effort to really transition wealth and ownership and sovereignty of solar energy. And so what it does is it provides the upfront expenses associated with developing a community solar project that puts residents at the center of owning the solar farm. So that means that there are multiple regulatory elements, there's legal documents that need to be developed. There's a large amount of community outreach and community engagement and education that needs to occur. So this grant provides the resources to do those upfront development activities. And so who is targeted for this? Well, it is the applicant is typically a community-based organization. That's who's targeted. Community-based organizations, public entities like municipalities or school districts who could not find a community-based organization with the credentials or the passion or the expertise or the mission statement to do this type of project, or a technical service provider that is directly working with a community-based organization. And so why is this program important? It's important because we want to remove the barriers associated with developing such a robust project. And we want to make sure that the community and the business community within that, where this project is located, is actively engaged. And so we want to provide the capital needed to do all of those activities. When we go back to equity, we think about the little box in that picture. So this is a tool to provide the specific box needed to allow that applicant, that entity, to access the solar energy projects. And then lastly, who will the grant benefit? The grant is intended to benefit the CEJA ecosystem, the workforce that is being trained, the contractors that are in this space. And so the goal is for the project to include equity eligible contractors, include local contractors, include the workforce participants that are coming from the CEJA hubs, as well as the other workforce, the pre-apprenticeship program, as well as the LWIAs, the other workforce entities that are being trained in construction related to a solar project. Next slide. So when we look at what is funded, what does the money look like as it flows in this particular grant? So there is up to $8.5 million per year for community solar sovereignty. The award ranges between $50,000 to $1 million per project. We anticipate awarding up to 40 applicants. And the performance period is over 4 years. And what this means is we expect you to get through the pre-development phase and the construction phase such that you now have outcomes that you would have said that you were going to accomplish. And we will be able to evaluate whether or not you met those outcomes. Keep in mind that the funding is specifically for the pre-development areas, but we follow you over the entire course of your project to see if your vision that CEJA supported in development actually achieved its target goals. So we follow you over a 4-year period. So your project from pre-development to to construction, and a time period post-construction should be 4 years. And we will develop that timeline, and we will validate the timeline and the milestones with you if you are awarded. Next slide. So who can apply? Community-based organizations. And this is defined by the Illinois Power Agency's 2022 long-term plan. So that means the community-based organization must be majorly governed by local residents, that their mission is and their offices are operating in the community. So their main office is inside, that EJR3 community. That their mission and priorities are identified by the residents. So demonstrating that the reason why they're doing these things is because this is what the local community is asking for and is needing. The solutions to the community's problems are being addressed and developed by the residents. So this isn't just someone sitting outside the community that's saying this is how we fix the issues in this community. The people in the community are saying this is how we believe we can fix this problem or this challenge and this issue that we're having. And that the program design, implementation, and evaluation is driven intimately and involved intimately with the residents. These are all the elements that came out of the legislation and these acts that the community said this is what a community-based organization should look like. Next slide. So the public entity may also be an applicant, but they must be able to say that there is no other community-based organization in our community that is doing this work that meets the criteria described in the previous slide. So public entity is a municipality, a county, a school district, or park district, right? And they are supporting an equity investment eligible community and creating a project that supports low-income households in that community. The public entity must certify that there's no local community-based organization that exists in that area that can fill the role, and the public entity must provide the same showing that they too have been engaged in supporting that local community. Next slide. Let's talk about the technical service provider, which is the third final type of applicant. So a technical service provider applicant must demonstrate a robust community engagement, and they are a technical service provider like a solar developer that has experience implementing this type of project, a solar project or community solar project, and therefore has identified a community-based organization to partner with in an effort to execute the project goals. Next slide. So when we look at the phases of the grant, you would break them into 2 different phases, and you can choose to apply for phase 1 only. You can apply for phase 2 only, or you can apply for both phase 1 and phase 2. We follow you throughout the life of the project, so pre-development phases, which is what we will pay for, phase 1 and phase 2, but we also follow you through the construction phase and shortly after the implementation, so that we can see whether or not you achieve the outcomes you said you would achieve with this particular project. So phase 1 is the planning and the feasibility, evaluating the site. And I think we break that down in the next slide. So phase 1 is the really, really early stages of the project. You have a concept, you have a community, but now we need to let's identify the actual site, we identify the site and we evaluate that particular site. We may need to do feasibility study. We might need to do site analysis, and we may need to acquire the site. So those are the types of things, funding opportunities and activities that you would do within phase one that this grant would cover. In phase two, you're looking at, you've already done the planning and feasibility. So that means you have site control. That means you know where you're going to do it. However, you need to identify the right general contractor. You need to secure the financing. You need to purchase the site, right? And so those are the types of activities that would be done under phase two. And so not only does it cover elements regarding to the site, but this grant also covers staff and operational expenses associated with these activities. How will the funding be provided? So of course, I said a little bit earlier, you can either apply for just phase one of the project, or you can apply for phase two only of the project, or you can apply for both phase one and phase two. Next slide. So if in the grants, if you've ever been through a grant process or not, think about just the typical step one, step two, step three of our grant process is that you would apply for the grant and you would receive a notice that your project has been has met the minimum requirements, which is and so therefore, if you meet the minimum requirements, you will receive a notice stating that you've met the minimum requirements and you are being considered for an award. During that process, we would really engage in having a conversation and negotiating what your milestones are and really taking a fine look at what your project seeks to accomplish and how you're going to accomplish that. And then you would receive, as Amber alluded to earlier, what's called an award notice, right? And so you can do that for both. If you apply for just phase one, that occurs. If you apply for both phase one and two, know that you can only receive phase two funding after you have completed all the milestones and activities that you negotiated in phase one. So once you've completed all the phase one activities, then you could move into phase two activities and begin receiving funding for phase two activities. Next slide. So there are specific reports that you must submit throughout the life of your grant. And so those include the number of workers recruited from the CEJA and CEJA workforce programs, the number of contractors that you would have recruited from the CEJA contracting programs, the amount of funds that you leveraged for the project. So particularly that means you identified other sources of funding other than this particular grant. And so you have leveraged those things. You have acquired those additional funding sources in an effort to completely fund the project. Those examples would be Illinois, using the IP Illinois Shines, or the community solar sovereign community solar funding from the IPA. It could be a private funding. It could be, traditional funding from a bank. Whatever those additional sources are that you needed in an effort to completely fund the project, you would identify those and then seek to secure them. Another reporting element is just the number of households that you anticipate would benefit from the project. the amount of energy that these households would save, so the amount of money and the overall economic impact to those residents or businesses. And then definitely demonstrating the partners. So have a list of who your community partners are, the institutions that were engaged in supporting the execution of the project. And if phase 2 is one of the, if you're asking for funding for phase 2, then we would expect that you would be able to show an estimate or show what you've achieved, the amount of solar that you produced with the execution of the solar array. So we will pause here for some questions.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Hillary, we have a few different questions in the chat, and then I know we have a few people who may want to reiterate some of those questions. So we have a question about community college eligibility, whether that fits into the community-based organization eligibility or public entity eligibility.
So depending on how the community college is chartered, I mean, you would look to see whether or not you meet the CBO criteria. If you cannot say that you meet that CBO criteria, then if you look from the public entity standpoint, you would still need to be able to say that there was no community-based organization who could do this activity. And so as a result, you are engaging in this activity. You could also choose if that is the scope of what your community-based college does is renewable energy type projects, and that's part of your mission, then you could be that technical service provider. But again, you would have to identify a local community organization, that community-based organization that you are working with in an effort to be that.
We also have a few questions about specific allowable costs. So whether if you're trying to build a new gymnasium, but that part of the building will be solar powered, or if the entirety of the building will be solar powered, would that be an allowable cost? And are site acquisition costs allowable expenses?
So the project is building a gymnasium with solar on top of it. So the pre-development expenses associated with a development project would be the architectural engineering designs, the site acquisition. And so, yes, all of those elements are pre-development expenses for this type of solar project that you have outlined. You just have to make it clear to the merit reviewers that there is community impact. So at the end of it, who's going to own and who's going to benefit from the solar generation that was developed? I would say that particular project fits more under the Equitable Energy Future Grant than it does Community Solar Sovereignty, because Community Solar Sovereignty is really looking to for low income people, for people of a distressed community, of EJ community, to really have ownership of the solar once it is installed and generation is occurring. So that type of project fits more for an Equitable Energy Future Grant than it does for Community Solar Sovereignty.
We also had a few questions about equipment that might be needed for the construction phase of the project. Would that qualify under procurement and contracting, or would those be construction costs and therefore not allowable?
Say the first part of the question again.
So if an applicant is trying to procure equipment for the project, would that be an allowable cost under procurement and contracting, or would that be a non-allowable cost under construction?
I think it depends on if the equipment is related to feasibility if it's related to feasibility activities versus construction activities. And so that will be done on a case-by-case basis. So we would need to see what type of equipment you are trying to purchase or trying to secure.
And
If it's construction related, then no, that's not pre-development.
we have a few hands raised as well. I don't know if we want to allow people to just unmute in order.
Mhm. I'll call out Jacqueline Daniel.
Hello, good afternoon. Yes, I'm Jacqueline Daniel. I'm with Macedonia Development Corporation in East St. Louis. I had a question about the technical service providers. It was mentioned, but I don't know if it was clear if it was a requirement or recommendation that they must have a community service or a community a CBO partner as they apply. Was that a requirement or recommendation?
It is a requirement.
Okay, thank you.
See, it says working in direct partnership with community-based organizations.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And then Brandy.
Hi, Hillary. Thank you very much for answering our question about the equipment and procurement of equipment for construction, that would be included in only for developmental costs, not construction costs. So I appreciate that. Had a quick question. If we were applying this project also to the Illinois Solar for All program, would
Mhm.
that have to be in the community energy solar sovereignty sub-program of Illinois Solar for All, or could it go into any program in Illinois Solar for All? Or are they not related at all? This DCEO grant and the Illinois Solar for All energy sovereignty program.
So what I would want everyone is to think about building the capital stack for a project and consider this as a source of capital for the project. Consider the IPA, Illinois Shines or Adjustable Block Grant or community, consider that as a source of funding for the project. And so therefore you have to look at your project and see if it fits the requirements for those various IPA solar project tools, right? So, not knowing the details of your project, I'm not quite sure which one of the IPA programs it fits under. So the goal is that you look across the state's ecosystem of renewable energy programs and see where your project fits, right? And meets those criteria and use those programs as a resource to fund your project. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Thank you very much. And I just had one additional question. Will there be any additional grants to the Equity Eligible Future Grant Program and the Community Energy Solar Sovereignty Program that will be coming out this summer or fall?
So both programs are rolling.
Gotcha.
That means that that every cycle, there is a period of time where we cut off, where the funding cuts off for that particular round, but it immediately starts, the very next day you can apply. It will just fit within a different funding cycle.
Gotcha.
So
Thank
you
you.
can.
And I guess my question was relating to the equipment for the actual construction itself. Will there be a grant coming out for that? That is obviously will be separate from these two grants.
I'm not aware of any CEJA funding that supports con direct construction. So I guess we will have to see if there are any other state programs that come out that could support that.
Thank you very much.
Let me see if there are any other
So
hands.
Hillary, this is Linda. Hillary, a few questions came in about like ownership of the project, and I'm not totally sure if it's ownership of the land or ownership of the actual solar project, but just wanted to emphasize that this program is prioritizing, is emphasizing, is trying to fund projects that promote community ownership. But in terms of who owns the land, whether that's the developer or whether you're leasing the land or whether you buy the land for the project, doesn't necessarily specify. It could be any of those. Hillary, would you add anything to answer that question?
No, I would not. I see that question from Joseph. I think what is important to do when you are submitting your application is to be clear, to have that clearly defined. The legislation doesn't lend any specifics to it. So it is, your responsibility to clearly be able to say the owner, who owns the project really meets the spirit of the legislation, which is for it to have a community benefit, a wealth and economic improvement to the residents of an environmental justice R3 community. So make sure you clearly describe in your narration of how it is going to improve the economic conditions of those residents who are who are benefiting from the solar project and the energy produced from it.
We have a question from Patrick Weller. I don't know if you had that question answered, Patrick.
Yes, I did. Thank you so much.
I see this question. Would grantees be responsible for bringing in subscribers upon the project completion? If not, does the grant legislation outline a plan of doing so? That is why the program period is over a 4-year period, and why it speaks to that community engagement, because it is providing the funding for you to do what's required to make sure that the project is sustainable. So doing those things on the front end to get the subscribers, to do all of that legwork to fund the project, right? That includes the construction of it and the life of that project. So and it's just the beginning of your business model, not to fund your business for its entirety, right? So it would be up to you again to truly describe the sustainability, what happens after construction. If you didn't fully subscribe the system, then what your plan is to do what's needed to fully subscribe the system and to maintain it. So Joseph, I could not answer that question just in this short amount of time and reading your paragraph. So again, if you want to submit a question through FAQ, and then the team and I can take a look at that and provide a response. So then, Jackie, yes, it will have an FAQ.
And I can answer a question about that Q&A. What we have now is a number of CEJA programs under that Q&A, and I've placed the Equitable Energy Future and Community Solar Energy Sovereignty grant programs at the top of that document. So all of these questions that you've asked, these great questions that you've asked during this webinar, will be addressed in that Q&A online.
I haven't seen anyone ask this yet. We do have additional slides. So I will let Christine move. Let's move on to the final slides, and just remind everyone that it is rolling. And if you, try and are not successful the first time, you can reapply.
Great. Thank you so much, Hillary. And thank you so much to everyone for your engagement so far in this presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and discuss the actual application process and required documentation. And then we're going to close out our presentation today talking about some application resources and then next steps that you can all take to advance your application with the Community Solar Energy Sovereignty. So let's start by looking at the required application materials. So if you've applied for a DCO grant before, some of these will look familiar to you. But the first one is your uniform grant application, your uniform budget, conflict of interest disclosure, mandatory disclosure, and then the grant application specific to community solar sovereignty. And if you're a public entity, you do need that attestation form, just noting that there are no other community-based organizations in your community that can fulfill that role. One thing to keep in mind is that you do need to submit every single one of these documents. So if one of these are missing, your application will not move forward in the review process. You need to make sure before you submit, you have all of these in order. When you submit, they all come through. And just I want to make a note just from some other applications we've seen on that uniform budget template. Make sure to include your budget narrative. That is something that is extremely helpful for the merit reviewers to get an idea of the budget you're proposing. Where is that money going? What is it being utilized for? What partners or consultants, contractors are going to be engaged, and how will they be engaged? So really keep that in mind when you're going through that uniform budget. That is also communicating to those reviewers how you're actually going to be using funds for this grant. Now, all of these NOFO materials are available on the Community Solar Energy Sovereignty Grant NOFO page, which is the link in the chat for you. So you have access to all of these right now. Now let's talk about some special considerations. So as Hillary mentioned earlier, the award range is $50,000 to $1 million. However, applicants may submit multiple applications with a maximum award per applicant of $3 million. So if you submit 5 applications, each of those applications needs to fall within that 50,000 to 1 million range. but total, they cannot exceed that $3 million mark per applicant. So just something to think of as you're submitting your applications. Again, keep in mind, you can submit just for phase 1, just for phase 2, or phase 1 and phase 2. This opportunity does not allow for reimbursement of pre-award costs. So these are just expenses that are incurred prior to receiving that award. And then a few other kind of restrictions, items to think about, and these are outlined in section B and C3 of the notice of funding. Cost sharing and matching are not required. The applicant organization must have an annually negotiated indirect cost rate agreement. There are a couple of different options that are outlined in the NOFO of how that cost rate is determined, so make sure to take a look at that. And then finally, leveraged funding. So we had a little bit of a discussion in the last section about how are you pulling together different funds. So it is a benefit to be looking at other areas, other programs, grant programs that you can be pulling from. So a couple that are listed here, the Adjustable Block Program and the Illinois Solar for All. But we also wanted to share with you, and I know there's a lot on this slide, but we really wanted to make sure that you had kind of a full understanding of available funding sources. So here on this slide, you can see kind of our Illinois Renewable Clean Energy Transition Ecosystem and all of the different agencies that are operating and offering different funding availability. Obviously, they each are going to have their own criteria, so make sure to look into those and if these fit your program. But it's going to be really beneficial for you as you develop your application to start looking at how you can leverage other funding sources. In this slide deck that we will send out tomorrow and will also be posted on the Notice of Funding website, you'll also get this project scenario. So this is meant to be an example for you as you are thinking through your project and starting to kind of create that capital stack that Hillary referenced. So thinking through what are the different types of funding sources that your program might be able to pull from, and where are those different agencies that you need to kind of look into and make sure if there is funding available for your project that you are seeking it and attempting to kind of not solely rely on community solar energy, but really help to fund your program overall. So again, this slide will be available. So it just gives a really good project scenario for you to think through as you're developing your own project. So next up, we're going to talk about some tips for the NOFO. So, and for your application. So these are items that we have seen from previous applicants, just things that we've seen be helpful. And we wanted to make sure as you develop your application, you are as successful as possible. So the first one here is ensuring that you are reading every single NOFO section. So I know at times it can feel a little bit like you're getting a little bit lost in the weeds on some of the language, but it really is important, highlight, underline, take notes, make sure that you are understanding what is this program about, what are the anticipated outcomes or who is meant to benefit from this, and ensuring that you, when developing your application, are aligning your application with this notice of funding. Also, take a look at page 4 of the Notice of Funding. This is where you have performance goals, measures, and metrics. These can be great places to identify how you want to set up your project. You can start to identify some milestones, what your project is meant to achieve. So this is a great place to get some ideas for your application. Then you have the project narrative on page 5. And this is something that we hear from our merit reviewers a lot, is they want to understand, what is this project? Where is this project going to be located? What is the benefit of this project? What are you actually planning to do? So make sure to really be telling your story. Why are you coming to this grant? What is this grant going to help you with? What is the project that you are looking to actually fund, or you're asking for actual funds for? So obviously, we want to understand kind of that end goal, those outcomes, but also talk about this funding. What is this funding going to do, and how will it advance your project? And then next up, we have eligibility for GATA. So Amber walked us through all of the eligibility for that. Now that does take a little bit of time if you are not already in that GATA portal, if you are not already pre-qualified. So our suggestion to you is start now. So the sooner you get started on that, the sooner all of your information can get processed and approved, and you can get pre-qualified to make sure you can receive state funding. And finally, here we have the application and submission. So like I said, with our required documents, if there is just one piece of, one part of those kind of materials that are not supplied, it makes you ineligible. So don't kind of count yourself out before you've gotten in the game here. Make sure all of your documents are with your submission. So next up, and this is similar to kind of our discussion on GATA, is really ensuring that you have your UEI, you have your SAM.gov approvals. That is all related to your pre-qualification. So again, get started immediately. The next one is Smartsheet. So this one is extremely important. There is a Smartsheet link in the notice of funding, and that is how you will submit all of your application materials. Please keep in mind that email documents cannot be accepted. Anything that you submit for this application has to come through that Smartsheet link. So make sure that that is where you are going to submit your documentation. Next is your application review. This is a list of everything that is required. So it goes over those required documents I talked about earlier, but it also goes through some more in-depth items for you to be thinking about as you're outlining your project. So things that our merit reviewers will be looking for. Then you have your award, grant, and reporting. So this is what you should expect from DCEO. And then we have some final hints here. So this is one that I have seen help a lot of applicants. Have someone else read your application. So keep in mind that our merit reviewers, while they are experienced in the industry, they may be experienced at DCEO, they may not know your organization, they may not know your community, and so you don't want to assume anything. So having someone else read your application can really offer you kind of that outside perspective to help you kind of clarify points, make sure that you are telling your story the best you possibly can. And then finally, think like a merit reviewer and use the NOFO criteria. So on page 10 of the notice of funding, you are going to notice this little table you see on your screen here. And this table actually gives you almost kind of a key when you're thinking through your application. So these criteria are the actual criteria that will be utilized by merit reviewers. So you can see the criteria are split up into 4 different categories: documentation of need, applicant qualifications and capacity, project quality, and then cost effectiveness and return on investment. Each of these sections also has a couple of statements in there telling you to get the full 5% of points for this section. or for this statement, this is what you need to demonstrate. To get the full, 25% for applicant qualifications and capacity, this is what you would need to demonstrate. So when you are thinking about creating your application, utilize these criteria. Before you submit your application, think through how your application is fitting into these criteria, and if you are meeting or exceeding most of these criteria. Now, our merit reviewers, they're looking for a score of 75 or above. That's what would qualify you to move on in the application process. So if there are some of these that you feel maybe are a little bit weaker than others, don't fret, but just really make sure that you are doing the best that you can to meet or exceed all of these criteria and really tell your story, because it's going to be completely based on what those merit reviewers read in your materials. That's all they can look at. So really put kind of your best foot forward in that front. So like Hillary mentioned earlier, this is a rolling grant. So what that means is that unlike some other grants that have a set deadline, we are going to be reviewing applications in rounds. So the current round, round 1, spans from March 5th to July 1st. You can submit your application at any point during that window up until July 1st at 5 p.m. Applications are going to be reviewed on a first come, first served basis. We do kind of rolling reviews with our merit reviewers. And then this is extremely, extremely important, this last piece. If your application is denied, you are going to receive a denial letter that gives you insight into what the merit reviewers found that maybe could have been made stronger, could have been clearer. And you're able to seek some technical assistance. You're able to take that feedback, and then you can resubmit an application. So please keep that in mind. As long as you're still within that review period, you can resubmit that application and it will be re-reviewed. So that's something that's really unique about these rolling grant opportunities. So before we move on to talking about our resources, Devin, are there any questions about the application documents?
Thanks, Christine. Not specifically about the application. I think we still have a few other questions about specific reimbursement costs, allowable reimbursement costs, and eligibility for certain projects. So I don't know if we want to tackle those now or if we want to wait till the end.
Yeah, let's try to tackle those at the end, and then any that we can't exactly hone in on. Some of these might be pretty specific. That might be something we need to throw to that FAQ page or deal with kind of in that technical assistance.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you, Devin. All right, so let's move to application support and resources. So like I said, our teams are really rooting for all of you. We really want to see these applications be successful, to see community projects be successful. So we have provided support, resources. So of course, go to the Community Solar Energy Sovereignty Grant Program NOFO webpage. That is where you are going to find all of your NOFO materials. You will find information. That's also where you will find a link to the FAQ page. You can always submit your questions to ceo.ceja@illinois.gov. So this is where we receive a lot of questions. They are then added to that FAQ page so everyone can see those responses and make sure that they have kind of access to as much information as possible. You also can reach out to OEBU's grant manager. So that is Erin McAvoy. So Erin has suggested to us that it would be really great to actually, when you're submitting those questions, submit them to ceo.ceja, but also to him, because together they can really get those questions answered. So there's a couple of different ways you can reach out. You also, as I mentioned a little earlier, can seek technical assistance. So we have a team of CEJA program coaches that are set up to work with your organizations one-on-one, help answer questions, provide support, help you kind of build out your program and get a better understanding of what a successful application will look like. So you can scan this QR code here with your phone or utilize the link that was just put in the chat, and feel free to sign up technical assistance. I know technical assistance will not start until likely the next week or two, just so we can get through these technical assistance sessions. But look out for communication if you've already gone ahead and signed up. So next are our budget and grant resources. So DCEO offers a grants page. So on that page are all of the grant opportunities that you can apply for, but there's also some really great upcoming grant trainings. So Amber discussed they have kind of weekly office hours, weekly trainings that you can access. There's also a video training and resource library. So there's some really nice tutorial videos on that page that walk you through some basic items. So what is pre-qualification? What type of audit might I need? Just how to navigate. What does the application and merit review process look like? So really great videos, good resources. And then, of course, you can also reach out to the DCEO Grant Help Desk. So that is a great resource as well through the Office of Accountability, where they can answer any of your grant questions that you may need assistance on. All right, and then we also have some partnership resources. So obviously we know that as you are building out these programs, you're going to want to engage with partners. Our teams, our merit review teams, also look for how are you developing those partnerships. So here's just a couple of partnership resources that we wanted to provide you. So the Illinois Shines program has offered a kind of find an equity eligible contractor list that is updated periodically. And then also the Business Enterprise Program Directory. That is a great place to go if you are trying to find partners who are part of that BEP or that Business Enterprise Program. All right, and then we have some next steps. So we are going to be hosting a second technical assistance session on March 28th at 1 p.m. So this session is going to focus on the merit review process, as well as tips and hints for a successful application and budget. So we touched on that a little bit today. We're going to take a deeper dive into that on March 28th. That registration link is going to be put in the chat for you, so you can go ahead and register for that immediately. Again, you can sign up for a technical assistance session with a CEJA program coach. And then you can always just get started and start completing your application, start compiling your documentation, filling out all of your narratives, everything like that. Always available to kind of start on that immediately if you would like. And with that, I'm going to turn it now over to our kind of questions and answers. We have about 6 minutes. So Devin, if there are questions that we can address now, otherwise we might need to just kind of throw them to the FAQ if they're a little bit more detailed or we need some feedback from the team.
Yeah, and I just want to reassure everyone, if your question has not been addressed thus far, I am gonna take these back to DCEO and post them on our Q&A link that's publicly available, and we will send out to you tomorrow with the recording and the slides. But one question that has come up a few times that is of interest to a few folks on this call, does the project have to benefit individuals? Could it be used to put solar on a public building, say a school, library, etc., and benefit the community through lower bills?
That's a really great question. So based on what's in the notice of funding, it does not necessarily have to benefit just individuals. This program is really focused on kind of that community benefit as well. So if it does benefit individuals, if it's going to benefit the larger community, specific groups, it's really focused on kind of ensuring that there is a tangible benefit from this solar project.
So if I could clarify, Christine,
Yeah, absolutely.
if I understand that correctly, if there is a proposal that wants to put a solar array in on public space like a library or a school, the benefits should not only be retained by that public entity to go towards, servicing costs, for instance. There should be some other form of partnership or agreement with community members to get that lower energy cost to them. Is that correct? Like, for instance, to lower utility costs?
Let me touch base with Hillary on that. Because I'm leaning towards one answer, but I don't want to give an official answer before I touch base with her.
Okay.
So Christine, this is Linda, and
Yeah,
I
Linda.
guess I would answer that by saying we need a clear definition of what a community solar project is, and please look for that in the FAQ. Generally, a community solar project is a large public array that is, with subscribers from the community. People can't necessarily not everyone can put solar on their rooftops. So a community array allows people to kind of buy into an array, have community ownership of an array. That's generally what, when you think of a community solar project, that's generally what we think of. We'll provide clarity on that exact definition. And I do want to emphasize that this is one of two related grant projects. The Equitable Energy Future grant program is also out, and that has a little bit broader of a focus. So projects including rooftop solar and energy efficiency, those projects would be probably more appropriate for the Equitable Energy Futures Grant Program. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that NOFO. We provide technical assistance for that one as well, and would be happy to answer your questions about that.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Linda. And one other item I want to say about Equitable Energy Future, as well as community solar energy, is that if you are looking at these two programs and you're thinking that your project could benefit from both, you are allowed to apply for both. You want to make it clear where each of those funds are going. You don't want to have the appearance of kind of double dipping, but keep that in mind as well, is that both of these grants can have benefits for different programs and projects. So like Linda said, take a look at that other NOFO as well and see, does your project fit better there, or perhaps your project could benefit from both of these grant programs. All right. Well, it looks like we're just about at time. Devin, if there are other questions, I know we're going to record those and we will make sure that those get onto the FAQ and we get official DCEO responses to each of those to help the applicants. So I just want to thank you all for joining us today and for your engagement throughout this session. And again, please reach out to the resources that we've provided. You all will receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to this recording and this slide deck, which will have all of those resource links as well. So thank you all so much for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.